Week 3 of the National Football League season is on the horizon, and here to help us break it all down is John Crick, Toronto Sun national NFL writer. And John, it was an exciting week number 2 with a ton of comeback victories, a lot of underdog upsets, and this week it's a lot of interesting road favorites. And we got to begin in Indianapolis as the Chiefs will take on the Colts Sunday at 1. The Chiefs coming in as 6.5-point road favorites. It's been a rough go so far for Matt Ryan last week, of course, especially. What do you make of this matchup?
You look at it and you go, yeah, the Chiefs should be almost a 7-point favorite on the road because the Colts are winless, 0-1-1, even with their new quarterback. He was going to be the quarterback, and I thought, and I'm sure a lot of Colts fans thought, that now that Matt Ryan finally has an offensive line, finally has a running game that can help him out a little bit, and a decent defense, we thought. None of those things has turned out to be true. I think they had 6 yards rushing at halftime, and their most recent loss, their blowout 24-0 loss at Jacksonville. But I've kind of got a little theory that it's just my own little thing. I don't have anything empirical to support it, but I always get the sense in trying to pick games in week 3 or week 4 that the most desperate team often comes out ahead of especially if they're playing a team that doesn't really have to win. The Chiefs are 2-0. Maybe a little more than a little fortunate to beat the Chargers last Thursday night. Got a lot of things go their way. Patrick Mahomes even admitted that he had an angel looking over his shoulder pretty much for not having thrown 3 or 4 interceptions, which were dropped or overturned on penalty or overturned on replay. So I got to think that the Colts are going to put out a great game. Is it going to be enough to beat the Chiefs? Don't know, but I'd strongly lean toward giving them almost a coin flip chance in doing so.
Yeah, it should be an interesting matchup there. Got to talk about the team that I would say has looked the most dominant so far this season, and that is the Super Bowl favorite, Buffalo Bills, as they are 2-0 to begin this season. A short week, of course, having played on Monday night. They have to head out to Miami. Always an interesting divisional matchup between these two sides. The Bills also 6.5-point favorites on the road. Last week, an incredible comeback by the Dolphins against the Ravens. Tua Tagovailoa, maybe his breakout game as an NFL starting quarterback. The Bills, of course, like I said, have a little bit shorter of a time here to rest, but how do you like this matchup between these two teams?
Well, it's hard not to take the Bills in almost any game. I mean, if you pick them every game this year, you're probably going to be right, looking like right now 12, 13, 14, 15 times out of 17 this year, right? So you can't go wrong with picking Buffalo just about every week at this point. They're looking dominant. They destroyed Tennessee. They smashed the running game. They did everything they had to do to win that game and win it big. But they're playing Miami now. I got a couple stats I'm going to access here. Their defense, Miami, after 2 games against New England, which didn't do much offensively, and then Baltimore, which still lost to the Dolphins, Miami is allowing an NFL worst 9.0 yards per pass attempt, 3rd worst in the league in passer rating defensively, 114.4, and they're 5th worst in completion percentage, allowing 71% of the opposing team's passes to be completed. Plus, they're tied for the 4th fewest sacks. They've only had 2 sacks in 2 games. I mean, you look at, Tampa Bay's had 10, the league leader, just to show you how far behind the Dolphins' defense is right now. So you got to think with Buffalo's offense just totally on fire, especially over the last 6 quarters. It was a little slow to start the season at Los Angeles Rams on that opening night, Thursday. But my gosh, the Bills can do almost nothing wrong on offense, no matter which wide receivers or offensive linemen get hurt. They seem to get better.
And finally, we talk about 2 of the oldest quarterbacks in the league, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, heading to Tampa Bay to take on Tom Brady and the Bucs. The Bucs 1.5-point favorites at home. We saw Tom Brady's frustration last week throwing the, I was going to say iPad, but some sort of, Microsoft Surface, what have you, throwing the tablet into the ground. It's not the first time we've seen that type of frustration for him. But like I said, the Bucs, slight favorites at home this week. Who do you like in this matchup?
You got to take the home team, I think, in this one, especially with what we've seen from that Bucs defense. I just referenced the fact that they lead the league in pressuring the quarterback, 10 sacks already. Defensively and a host of other categories, they're at or near the top as well, stopping the run. But you got to think, if they're sacking the quarterback 10 times already, Minnesota harassed Rodgers in that first game that Minnesota won quite easily 2 weeks ago. Well, you got to think the Bucs can replicate that, especially with the offensive line for the Packers still a little bit banged up. They don't have all their starters back yet, or at least playing to their potential yet. So I've got to think Tampa Bay, even though Tom, as you mentioned, Tom Brady and the offense, with all those receivers out, they ended that game with nothing but backup wide receivers in there, and still found a way. Brady did to lead them to victory. But even if they're average statistically so far, that Tampa offense, the defense, you can't bet against that this week.
Well, there you go. Just a few of John's picks for week number 3. You can get all of his picks at his Crick Slants newsletter. You can find his work at the Toronto Sun and on Twitter at John Crick.